Alright, so you got your first PC. I don't know why my video paused. It didn't pause. So, you just got your first PC, or maybe just another new one, or maybe this is even an older unit. Regardless, you got some upgrading to do. The good news for you is you already have many of your components. You already have, your CPU cooler, you need a motherboard RAM, you just need a power supply, you already got the... Wait, that's right, GPU.
So let's talk about this GPU and see what it can do.
But before I go over any of the gameplay footage I have so that you guys can get an idea of how good this GPU is, I'm going to put in videos of this GPU in natural scenery like every other British YouTuber who makes a, hardware channel on here. So, yeah, enjoy that. Anyways, what is a $10 GPU? Well, a $10 GPU can typically range from high as $20 to sometimes even $5 if you're lucky on eBay with bidding. Which you might immediately be saying, well, then it's not $10. Well, hear me out. Sometimes it can be $12. Use your brain. But I digress. It's usually DDR3, 1 gigabyte, and that's essentially it. Just, that. So then what's the catch? Why is this, it's DDR3, 1 gigabyte, it's not that great, right? Well, the catch is that it's $10, and there's really no catch, I'll be honest. And the reason why you would want to buy one of these, there's a few good ones, but I'll just talk about the more basic one, especially if you're dying to game,
But you're on a tight budget.
and you already spent most of your budget on everything else. You see, if you buy a new DDR3 1 gigabyte GPU, it's gonna cost you about $40. Why would you pay that when you could get one used for about $10, which is a quarter of the price? Hell, even if you pay a full $20, that's still half of what you would have normally paid. And, not that you would want to absolutely game on one of these things, but could you? And it also depends on why you're getting it. If you have an older system that doesn't really have a display, or the onboard graphics have completely deteriorated, but the CPU still has high clocks, and maybe you can even overclock it, then hey, maybe getting its own GPU might not be a bad idea. And even then, it's smart to have something like a troubleshooting GPU in case, well, in the future, your GPU might go bad, especially if it's extremely old at this point, or it's on the fritz. But let's get into the real meat of this all. Can you game on a $10 GPU?
Alright, well, let's go over all the footage. But before we do, I want to say a few things. One, this GPU is a Radeon 6450, which is a pretty old card, but you can get cards of varieties like this and get about the same performance. Two, I'm not going to put any frame data or measurement systems here because, well, if you're the kind of person who buys a $10 GPU, you probably just care only if something runs or not. And in this case, unless I have something to compare to, like another GPU or something, then I don't see the point in it. Especially because, once again, it's a $10 GPU. But I've been blabbering long enough. Let's talk about some of these games. Like for example, the one that you're seeing here, Faster Than Light, runs exceptionally well and is highly playable. There's no lag at all, which, shouldn't be surprised, this game can be run on many systems. So what about a very polarizing game in comparison? Like a first-person shooter kind of game. The game Mount & Blade Warband runs pretty good with lag here and there, but without it dropping below 30. And for a game like this, that's perfectly fine because, well, it's not a fast-paced FPS action shooter thing, so it's still very enjoyable to play. And also, it only really dips in frame rate when you're in a big battle area, and even then you're not really swinging half the time and you're mostly shooting at people over, your allies' heads. So it's a good game for a GPU like this. Moving on, I tried games like Don't Starve Together, and it made me think about what kind of games someone who would buy a GPU like this would play. Because, think about it, you're not going to be playing a lot of newer games. There are some new games, but not many, especially because they have a lot of requirements. But I thought, hey, maybe the kind of person who would buy a GPU like this just wants to play a game with their friend, especially a multiplayer-based game like Don't Starve Together, or, as you can see, games like Stardew Valley here, which run exceptionally well with very little problems. And of course it'll run lighter games like Nuclear Throne without an issue. That goes without saying. Also, Streets of Rogue is a game you can play on this. Yeah. But what about games you wouldn't imagine being playable on this? Well, I tried the good old Source engine out, and Gmod runs? Question mark? It's hard to say. At 1080p, it sure does lag, so I wouldn't think that this is the most playable experience. But of course, if you just lower some settings down to like 720p, for example, or lowering some textures, stuff like that, the game starts becoming real playable real quick. So if you're the kind of person who just really wants to go on Gmod RP servers and just screw around, then this isn't a bad GPU for that. And if Gmod can run this, then that means other Source games like CSGO, obviously Half-Life 2, and games like Left 4 Dead 2 will run without many issues either. So once again, if you just want to play games with your friends, this GPU does have many options in terms of games to play. I'd figure not many sim games would run on this GPU too. I tried Banished, which ran okay, everything low, and I'm pretty sure you could definitely, crank up some settings here and there and still have a really good experience regardless. But I don't think sim games would run super well on this. So once again, you're gonna have to be careful with what games you select. I would assume Sims 3 would run alright on this. If I had Sims 3, I would test it, because I'm pretty sure a game like that would run okay on this, but just at low settings, of course. Now, before we get into the more intensive games that I've lined up, and by intensive I mean there's only like 2, I think, I did try emulating N64 games, which I figured would work, and they do. So if you're the kind of person who likes to play Mario 64 ROM hacks, this GPU is actually pretty good for it. And that also goes for any other N64 ROM, and I'm assuming PS1 ROMs, since they kind of fit under the same category of, processing power and GPU power. I didn't really believe that you could play, GameCube games or PS2 games, that kind of category, on this GPU, but lo and behold, it can run very well. I didn't have any lag, and I even tried a few stages that were pretty laggy on games like Super Smash Bros. Melee. So if you're the kind of person who just really wants to play netplay with a friend or something, then this is a pretty good GPU just for that alone. Now onto the final games that I kind of lined up for this all. I tried Hades because, well, it's a pretty new game, at least in terms of release date, and for someone who might want to play just roguelikes, this is a doable option, I believe. At first, I had hopes, and then they were crushed. The game was lagging really badly. So I went from 1080p to 720p, and it was pretty playable. Yeah, it lagged here and there, but I mean, come on. For $10, if you already have the game too, this is pretty, decent for what it's worth. And that's pretty much all that can be said about this GPU. It, isn't too good, but it isn't bad in some ways. I mean, it's kind of bad, but But then there was one more game. I knew that it wouldn't run at all, but I really wanted it to run. And most of you already know what this game is, but you're probably going to be like, wow, I might not want to experience that. But lo and behold, yes, Risk of Rain 2 runs on this GPU. And I'll be honest, if younger me really wanted to play this game, which many people would want to, this is a great game, I would definitely play this. Because, well, an experience is an experience in some cases, for some of us. And if $10 guarantees you that experience, then you might as well take it while you can. And I know a lot of people in the comments will probably say, well, you could probably overclock it a little bit, but remember, this heatsink is so small. If you did get a better heatsink, then maybe you could. And maybe in the future I'll do a video on that, but for now, I think that about sums up this GPU. And there you have it, the $10 GPU. The official answer of it all is yes, it can game, but it does have some rules that you have to follow and work around with. I appreciate everyone for watching my first video. I have many other videos lined up in the future, and I hope that you guys will stay tuned for all those as well. I have a lot of budget ideas that I really want to show everyone on YouTube, or people who are just interested at getting, their money's worth while they can, especially in, a GPU crisis today. If you're interested in videos like these, please comment below and, ask questions, especially if you have an idea for a video or something you want to run by me. I'm literally going to try everything I can. But anyways, thanks again for watching, guys,